What's good, y'all, and welcome back to our most favorite game mode in the entire game, which is obviously Arena. This time we shall be taking a closer look at AoE DPS, which is the arena that this current season, this current week does end on. So, at least for this week, the better you perform here, the better your final placement. So in this video, you're going to be getting the knowledge on how to build 3 or better said 4 different teams. You're going to get the Watcher / Arbiter variant, which is pretty much the same thing. You'll see in a bit why. Then you get a chaotic team, and then in my best attempt at making a curse team work. So how exactly is this going to look like, and what's the goal for this arena? Let's start off with the Arbiter / Watcher variant. So for this Watcher and Arbiter team, it is pretty much the same way you build it out, and that is, let me move myself out of the way. So you want to start out with one of, you could say, 4 scenarios in descending order based on how good they are. So number 1 would be you owning an Ardea, where you can then kill the first wave. The minimum requirement here is that your Ardea is able to deal with these enemies before she dies, which obviously gets harder and harder the higher the enemy BP. After you've dealt with these enemies, you would then include a Siren, which not only blocks more enemies from reaching your Ardea, making her survivability higher, but Ardea is then going to be able to deal with these bottom enemies by herself, which generates you to cost to then go into a Ingrid at the very top, facing towards the right. The next one is a start where you go in with Siren, and Siren only has 3 block. She has 2 block naturally, she gets 1 block through the artifact, which means you're going to be leaking a unit. That is where Hatset comes in. You place her in a way like this, where she is able to help out with clearing the top, and then you can use her ultimate to take care of the unit that went through. So that is number 2. Number 3 is similar to this, and that is you're going to be placing in Siren. Then it's going to take a whole long while, and then you're going to be placing down Praetus right here, which is then the Arbiter variation. So Praetus is then going to help you kill these enemies, and you're going to use the Hammer Strike to take care of the unit that got passed. And then the least effective, you could say, would be starting out with a Valkyrie, where you would have her kill 1 enemy before they move past her, and then just obviously we didn't really gear her, and then start with a Siren in front of her to generate you to cost to ramp into a Ingrid. There might be a couple other things, like for example you could be trying to use a Zaris to take care of the enemies early, so you can get yourself enough time to place on your cost generator. But overall it's a variant of these, because you don't really have all that much cost going your way anyway. So those are kind of like the openers, and after you finish your opener, let me show you how you proceed. We know the beginning, let's talk a bit briefly about the team. So we have an Ingrid. So Ingrid, the higher the awakenings, the better. For this strategy to truly work even against like stronger teams, you need her at A3. We only have a A1 Ingrid here currently. So it's more of like a capped at Overlord-ish strategy with the way we have it right here. Then we have Ajax. What you're going to notice is Ajax is ungeared so that we can keep our BP low. Reason to keep our BP low is it makes our defense stronger. The lower your BP for the defense, the lower the enemies that you have to face, meaning a greater chance for your Ingrid to just one-shot these targets. And outside of that, we have Diao obviously for some healing and inspiration. So let's just hit that auto fight button and let this fight run through. So in the beginning, you see that we're going to be starting off with Ardea, as we've already talked about, which then obviously looks something like this, where we start in right here. We take care of the first, obviously here you can see that Hatset is also successfully able to deal with the first wave, but the problem would be then, how do you deal with the waves after that? So you see, for example, our enemy is forced to face the enemies in this path, which even if they weren't to let someone through, they would pretty much automatically lose. So after that, you're going to be getting in with Ingrid, doing some healing on your Ardea, and from there on it's just manage your Ardea to stay alive while having preferably as much inspiration on your Ingrid as possible, and then it's just like ending up with you one-shotting the waves, or you run into a enemy that just has way too much BP, which leads to your Ingrid team not being able to beat them. So obviously the higher the enemy BP, the higher the defender's BP, the more difficult it is for your Ingrid to continue on with these one-shots. We can again run against this team, see how they're tackling it, but the likelihood of us getting very far in this fight isn't really high. So you see, we're opening up with the same thing. As I said, it is also possible to start off with a Zarus, but Zarus, he really does lose heavily in effectivity once his summons run out, once he's been on the field for quite a while. So yeah, you see, obviously we are slower in the beginning right here, but then Ingrid should hopefully be able to pick up the pace. So you can see we've brought in a Diao, we're healing our Ardea up, and we can also then make the swap into the inspiration stance to hopefully kill these exploding units, right? Especially for this wave, if your Ardea can kill these exploding enemies before they reach her, then obviously she won't die. As you can see, we've been able to successfully deal with that wave, but that was like most of the time an Ingrid thing. And yeah, let's see how long it takes. Can you get them down? Okay, perfect. So we'll see another wave, and then right here it's gonna be pretty much the same thing. You want to try to kill these units before, and then if you can't, you then obviously have to like heal up your Ardea to make sure that she stays alive. Otherwise, the enemies are going to get past. But if you have a A3 Ingrid, then 99% of cases she's just gonna wipe the wave. If you have a A3 Ingrid, you could also, after you've placed all your units, take out that Cyrene and put her in again behind or in place of Ardea, so that you have like more of an insurance for units to just not get past you. And this is pretty much how this works. It depends on how good your Ingrid is. It depends on how good you're timing your stuff. It depends on how you start off the wave, but that's the general idea behind the Watcher Arbiter team. So the best way I found to show you these teams is by pretty much facing my own defense on the test server, which is why we're going to be going in with pretty much the same team. You can see the same spirit in this, but we'll be going over or going against a very popular variant of the chaotic team. So while this is ongoing, let me then briefly explain the chaotic team in a facing it as an opponent perspective. You see, we're opening up with exactly the same move, so Ardea has exactly the same task, and that is your Ardea needs to be able to deal with these waves. Reason for this Ardea to slapping harder is just a difference in gearing. After that, it is also the same move, but for the chaotic team, because you have a gun there, your Ardea is naturally more tanky, allowing her to just stay on the field by herself and deal better with these waves, which is what you see right here. And after that, it is where Lubu comes in. Yes, this chaotic team pretty much requires Lubu, and instead of Ingrid, you're going to be running Lubu and Ardea next to each other. Reason why Ardea is here, even if now most of the time Lubu is going to be doing all the damage, is because otherwise you don't really have a opener to buy yourself enough time to even get Lubu out on the field. So for us, obviously our game plan is to get in that Ingrid, which we're going to be doing. And the game plan right here is pretty much, you see that Lubu with his incredible range. Keep in mind this Lubu is at A0, so he could be having one tile further if you had a Lubu at A1, but that really isn't all that realistic. So what then ends up happening is us obviously bringing in a Diao. Keep in mind autos are weird at this moment, so this Diao is in healer stance, even though she could very well be in DPS stance. I don't like the fact that she's like not that clear on how she works in arena. But you see we have our A3 Ingrid here, which is heavily deleting waves. And even though it looks like we're going to win, it's more of a time thing. So there is a difference between us and them beating the waves, but you see that even though we have to wait for them to move, because we have still this range advantage, we don't need to wait for them to hit this tile, but they can pretty much already move out. Next goal in the plan is to have a Carnelian. This Carnelian is there to ensure that our sweet Ardea doesn't die, that our Lubu stays tanky, because these exploder guys are going to come in close, they're going to do their exploding shenanigans, and it's going to hurt. So what you've seen right there is one of the issues with Ardea, and that is if you don't properly heal her, she is obviously very prone to dying. But like I said, A3 Ingrid kind of just does the waves by herself, so it's not an important last step. For the other side is Garn as a Lord. Garn just makes Ardea more tanky, makes Lubu more tanky, gives them more stats, and overall just works as kind of like a last bastion of defense to hold out against these enemies. So at that point you can see it's pretty much just Ingrid versus everybody, and with the way the waves are staggered, it pretty much takes a whole lot of time. So you can't completely one-shot all the waves with Ingrid, meaning other teams do stand a chance to later catch up to your Ingrid. And here we have Ajax for cleanup. Obviously we need to get in some healing with just our Diao, because these exploder enemies are just hella annoying. And we should be gaining a chance to put in Ardea once again. Let's see if we can make it. Yeah, this time we're just gonna face her a tile further back, hopefully buying us enough time for Ingrid to deal with these enemies before they explode in her face. But we're probably gonna lose Ardea again. So yeah, that is pretty much all this team really is about. Just swap right here, and you see you don't even really have to do a whole lot. This is on auto, this basically works all the time, and Lubu you're pretty much just triggering the ultimate at 100%, so you deal more AoE damage against these enemies. Now we're closing in on wave 7. If we can fast forward time here, you see Ingrid is still doing a fantastic job, but because these waves are just going after each other, that means you don't really have like that huge Ingrid advantage, giving this chaotic team the chance to just pretty much outlive us. You see at some point Ardea just breaks, Ingrid doesn't properly time, our formation cracks, and this team, it doesn't crack. It's one of those that slow and steady wins the race. They are going to get past wave 9, and that is going to be the end of the discussion. So this is how the chaotic team works. The reason why we're not like talking about it like all that much and like, oh here, yeah, there and whatnot, is because you do need that Lubu. Without Lubu and then in Ardea it doesn't really work. You could probably replace Lubu with an Ingrid, but then you're gonna run into the same problems as the other team, besides having, I guess, an extra Carnelian. Before we now get to the curse team, let's already talk about gearing. I'll name you the reason in a bit. And let's have a look at gear. So gear-wise, the prevalent set is again going to be Infernal Roar. Infernal Roar just allows you to, from the get-go, deal the most amount of damage. The more attack you can stack on your units, the better. Even if you have an Invigoration unit, because the defenses of the enemies, especially at higher BP, are just that high that you're just pretty much going to be here stacking defenses. If you can't afford them, 4-piece left side gear is obviously the best thing possible. And if not, you'll have to go with something that has less attack speed, like for example a chest piece like this, or a chest piece like this. So this is pretty much the same for everything. You'll have your Ingrid, then you have your Ardea, who can also use the same set, where we again have full on attack focus with some crit damage. And our artifact Flux Pendant is a bit of a weird choice here. I would recommend either going with like an Eye of Sin, or just using a classical Rentier, because you are hitting over these long distances. And then lastly, you again have pretty much a 4-stat set, or again attack percent, crit rate, crit damage, depending on what you have. And gear-wise here, you have like 2 choices, right? Either you have another character that works with Infernal Roar, which Ajax doesn't, or you then use either a Sorbonne Arcana set with again an attack focus, or a Cataclysm set. Cataclysm set on Ajax only really worth it if you have a piece like this where you get this extra damage and healing effect. Overall, Cataclysm and Sorbonne Arcana are equal. Cataclysm is a bit easier to stack, easier to lose. Sorbonne Arcana is slower to stack, but permanent, and also you had more time farming Sorbonne Arcana, so unless your stats are at least somewhat equal, it doesn't really make sense to go with the Cataclysm. So for most of us, it's going to be ending up with a Sorbonne Arcana set. Doesn't have to be anything too crazy, like for example a piece like this, because Ajax isn't like the main focus. Whatever kind of gear you have, just make sure that you're focusing on attack over crit damage. If you can't do so, running a crit damage piece on someone like a Ardea really isn't the end of the world. And outside of that, we obviously only have a couple heroes to talk about, and that is Cyrene. Cyrene's build is somewhat interesting, I would say, and that is because Cyrene, you have two sets you can run her in, or better said, three. You have either Invigoration, you have the Invigoration, you have Wings of Grace, so that you can face her towards your Ardea, allowing your Ardea to do more damage, or you go for the Infinite Hyper Speed Mana Spring set. If you have a Mana Spring set, then you can use that one so you can get yourself a bit more rage on auto. Stat wise, it is a bit interesting, and that is because you can see we have barely any attack speed. The way attack speed currently works, apparently is going to get changed, is the higher your attack speed, the less return of rage upon attacking. So the best build does actually end up being, at least only for cost generators. Keep in mind that's only for cost generators, because DPSs do profit very, very much from attack speed, meaning that when they attack more, they do more damage, even though they get like less rage. What you're looking at is a full on HP set with as few attack speed as possible, and then the rest into rage regen. You can see, like for example, rage regen main stat. Here we have some HP with some rage regen, as well as some HP with some rage regen and rage regen and rage regen. It is not a big deal breaker if you have something like 100% rage, or even only like 60%. There's just like a brief difference between when these Cyrenes then generate cost. Lunacy Visor you can just put on her to get that extra block, which is pretty much required. Otherwise, you're going to be running into troubles with kill times. So let's move on to the curse team. Oh yeah, obviously we can't forget about Diao. So Diao, two ways, but one easier, one harder. And the easiest is just having as much attack speed and attack flat as possible. You can obviously ignore the rage region. Again, as much attack, as much attack flat, as much attack, as much as attack flat. Same here with attack percent and attack flat, and then attack percent on the weapon. Now the harder way, which also depending on how good your Ingrid is more required, and that is you having, especially if you're not running the chaotic team, is you having attack speed. So you see we have three requirements now, and that is attack main, attack flat, attack speed, attack main, attack flat, attack speed, attack main, attack flat, attack speed. You get it? Attack, attack, attack speed, attack, and attack speed. The reason for that is because Diao does benefit from attack speed in comparison to a Dolores. So the higher your Diao's attack speed, the shorter the intervals between Diao applying her attack based healing, meaning Diao heals faster, heals better, heals stronger. The reason why we're going over the curse team last and in a non-as serious fashion is because I can't properly show you the full potential, nor can I explore it at the current moment, and that is because this patch is only arriving on the 15th on the global server, and what it includes is not only a cost reduction to Anora, potentially making her viable in arena while also increasing her attack, as well as her attack range, meaning she might be able to defeat the waves before they even start moving, which will obviously skyrocket the value of a curse team. Next up, Beelzebub is also going to be getting this ability where when he's in a cultist team, which is the plan for a cultist arena team, his basic attack as well as the Plague of Ruin heal allies that are cultist. So for example, we might not even have to use someone like a Hollow anymore, because Beelzebub just heals them. And then lastly, someone else that might just put this whole thing together is Beatrix. Beatrix is also going to get her cost reduction. She's going to get a increase to her damage potential by reducing the cooldown needed to summon these Dream Eaters. It's going to increase the number of Dream Eaters by 1. The Dream Eaters are going to be restoring more rage to her upon their death. You're going to be doubling the ultimate damage from Beatrix. And also here, after casting the ultimate, the Dream Eater's targeting range expands to the entire battlefield. This is pretty much the upgrade that makes this whole thing potentially viable, right? It's hard to say without being able to test it. And then you have this reduction of the rage cap. Also, you're getting this synergy between her and summons, where she can increase her attack normally by 10%. Overall, where her awakenings make her stronger, where she can reduce her cost by even more, putting her at a ridiculous 17 cost, even better for Arena. And then her strongest state being at the A3, with the A4 and A5 being less important. So that's the reason why we're tackling this curse team last, because this is more of a could be in the future, isn't necessarily working at the moment. But I'll show you how you can at least get the rotation going. This might bring you to like the brink of Overlord, but it at least will allow you to stay in Platinum. So the way you open up this team is by using Beelzebub. Beelzebub is going to be slowing these enemies down, giving us enough time to be putting in our Cerberus. Cerberus, depending on his awakenings, might even be cheaper than that. But you see, like for example, like this, we're dealing with the very first wave. Now, from here on out, for the second wave, we are going to be, again, pretty much waiting, using Cerberus's ultimate to take care of these enemies. Right here. Then again, fast forwarding into the next wave. Here for this third wave, Cerberus is going to die, but he has a on death effect, meaning we're going to be making full use of that by him dying, by pulling everybody in so that they stay in that Cerberus AoE. And then we already pretty much have our costs to kind of build up this kill box we've talked about before, which is then in this case us using Beatrix, obviously before the changes. But you can see even right here, she is already dealing nice amounts of damage. Keep in mind, she's still weak, right? This is weak Beatrix. Then we have our Hollow, so we can heal everybody, because currently we don't have the health gain from Beelzebub. And then we further work pretty much on our kill box right here. If enemies look like they're going past, we can just pull them back with Beelzebub's ultimate. And also you can pull them in earlier before the wave even starts. But I felt this to be very hard to time and nothing super reliable. So again, for this wave, we are slightly behind behind this team, but we are still alive. We haven't lost yet. So once again, obviously everybody comes in. We can pull them into Cerberus, so we get that nice AoE range. And this is like one of the problems with the current AoE damage. There is a chance that your team just wipes. Wouldn't happen with the changes to Beelzebub. Let's see if we can still defeat this wave here at least. Yeah, you can see even with these deaths and whatnot, just imagine Anora being down here. The important part is Anora doesn't need inspiration. Inspiration doesn't help Anora. So having Anora down here or even down here away from the exploded units might just make all the difference in the world. And yeah, this is pretty much my, I guess, showcase of how a curse team could work, how you can at least get to like somewhat of a platinum, depending on what it is. Arena gearing is the same as we've mentioned in the gearing section, and this has been the three team selection on how you can take on the AoE arena. I hope this helped you out in any way, shape or form, and we see each other on the next vid. Peace!